Hello guys, and welcome to another fast and edited tutorial. Today I'm going to be going on how we can make a solar system interactable, and I'm going to use a small planetary satellite system in order to demonstrate what you could use for the larger effect. So in this case I'm going to make an image of the Earth where if you click on the moon you're able to go to a fact base about the moon and return back to the original simulation. So the way I'm going to do this, this is also going to give you a few ideas on how you might structure your projects as you design them. I'm going to start off in this window here. You can see I have a few windows open already. This is just to speed up the whole process. So this first window here I have saved as main. That's because we're going to be handling our main methods here. So in here I'm going to do two things. I'm going to go to MISC and instantiate. Not going to bother with any of this right now, but I'm going to call this instantiate system. We're going to be using a lot of this later. I can even copy paste this, and I'm going to call this instantiate moon. So at the moment you've probably been building all of your projects in one window. I think it's a better idea to use one scene as your main method and instantiate smaller subscenes from here. So this is all good. Next thing I'm going to do is go into my system, and I'm going to add a dummy which is the center of the system. So sys center. On top of this I'm going to add a mesh. Now this is a planetary system, so there is a fantastic thing Openspace provides in assets, primitives, sphere high mesh. So this is a good looking sphere. So import this here, might even scale it up a little bit. That's nice. We go to our materials, we want to add a new material, and this is going to be the Earth. Let's call this Earth, and here we're going to do something nice and fun and cheat a little bit. So before we do, let's quickly save it in a sensible place. So we go to our scene, this is demo 2, add a new folder, call it, what might I call this, materials, keeps it simple, and in here I'm going to put in Earth. This is going to save it as earth.material. Now Earth material, we want to have some images, and I said we were going to cheat. If we go into demos, solar system, and I assume you're not going to have to worry with this if you are just using the solar system. Under bitmap for the Earth we have this image here, SS Earth. You want to set that as the ambient and diffuse colour, and just for fun there is this Earth normal map that we'll put on as well. So let's close this down, apply this here, and wow, boy howdy is that a good looking Earth. Next thing I want to do is add a moon, but rather than adding that directly I'm going to add a dummy called moon orbital center, and then I'm going to add another. In fact, let's just clone this one, stick it in here, and set the alias to be moon. Nice and simple. So I'm going to drag this out, shrink this down, and we're going to need another texture, so let's add a new texture, call this moon. Material file like before, I'm just going to stick into resources, scenes, this is demo 2, material, moon. Doesn't matter too much if you follow through with all this, it just keeps everything organised and easier to export. So then in ambient, again I'm just going to run in and steal this from the solar system, bitmap, SS moon, and this normal map. This just makes the moon look a little bit more realistic, having a normal map on it as well. So there we go, the Earth and the moon to absolutely no scale at all, but perfectly serviceable for now. Whilst I'm in here I'm going to make the moon orbit the Earth. The way we do this is going into scene, go to object, we want rotate, it's going to be moon orbit. Source name is going to be the moon orbital center, that's why we named it like this, play on start, and 0.01 degrees in the y-axis is probably good. See now if I hit play, oh, that is running a little bit slower than I wanted it to, so let's up that, there we go, now we have a nice orbiting moon. Right, now that's over, I'm going to go into my next area, which is a zoom in on the moon. So this is just a lot of prep, and I'm going to show you how we tie everything together later, but this is a brand new project, so I want to add a dummy that holds the moon put in another high quality sphere. So in here we go to Openspace3D, Assets, Primitives, Sphere Height. Root materials, we're going to want to add a new material. I think I have goofed up a little bit because it might have been easier for us to just import from the previous one, but there's no real harm when we're just doing one project here. So let's just call this boom. Let's actually overwrite the other one, but we're going to do the same thing as we did before. So let's hop into ambient, demos, solar system, bitmap, moon, moon, and moon. So let's close it down, load that into here. And now I want to show you why we have this main window open up at all. So in the Instantiate plugin allows you to add another pre-rendered scene or another pre-made scene into the scene you're working on at the moment. This is very effective, and it means that essentially you should be building individual components as their own scenes and importing them into larger scenes rather than trying to build everything into one scene, because that will get very confusing very quickly. So Instantiate system, we pick a project. The project we're going to be doing for this one is our resources scenes demo 2 system. We do want this one to be open on the start, so this is going to be our original scene, so we load on init, and we don't bother with either of these. Instantiate moon, very similar. I'm going to put in moon.xos. We're not going to click this load on init. You can load multiple scenes, they'll just appear on top of each other, and that's a little bit odd. So if I now put in a timer, so this is just going to demonstrate, we're not going to be doing this in the actual project, but if I say after, let's call it 3 seconds, we want to instantiate the moon and remove the solar system or remove the earth system. We just set this up, and now if I hit play, nothing's going to happen because I haven't been saving as we go along. So don't forget to constantly be saving. That's actually on me there. So both these are saved. If I hit play now, we have the earth and the moon. Isn't that gorgeous? And 3 seconds later it hops to the moon. And all that's done is it's loaded in this scene, and after 3 seconds we destroyed that and we loaded in this scene. So we don't want this to be done just by timers, we do want this to be interactable. So we want to have it so if we hover over the moon or if we click on the moon, it brings us to our moon scene. How are we going to do this? We go into system, we're going to make an object click. So this involves how objects interact with the mouse. So for this I'm going to click on the moon, get rid of this enable hand cursor, it doesn't really matter too much. And we want to run this moon mouse. And now what we want to do is we want to pass something from this scene over to this scene. There's a special thing we have for that, and that is under MISC input tunnel. So this lets you tunnel through projects, and this is going to be moon hovered or moon clicked. Give the tunnel a meaningful name, so I'm going to call this moon clicked, and I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to copy this whole thing over to here, and if the moon's clicked, then we want to remove the system and add the moon, and if we left click, we want to send the input, and that will then pass through. That really is all there is to it, so make sure to save it, hit play. If I click on the moon, that brings me through to here. That's all you need to do, and that brings you up to the next section. Okay, so that isn't everything. I'm going to quickly demonstrate an idea. Because it's possible that in your AR world you're not going to have a mouse or a reliable way to click, I'm going to show you how we can use a hover trigger. So for a hover trigger, it's very simple. We're going to MISC, we bring up a timer. I'm going to choose 500 milliseconds, so half a second. This is just going to be a buffer to make sure that the hover is intentional. And what we do is if mouse is over, we start the timer. And if mouse is out, we stop the timer. And if the timer completes its timing, that also sends an input. So this means a click isn't necessary. All we need to do is hover. Well, this won't do anything in this scene, of course. I need to save this and run it in the main section. If I hover for half a second, just like there, that'll also count as a click. You should be able to hear no clicking is going on right now. I'm just leaving the mouse where it is. What we can also do is, if we wanted to make the hitbox for the moon bigger, you can add in an invisible sphere. Invisible spheres aren't too hard to do, and you can use that as a collision box, although I'm not going to go into that today. I'm more than happy to at another time if you want me to. Anyhow, so that we've made our trigger to get to our moon, but currently the moon scene's very boring. This is where we might want to make an educational project. So if I play this now, this isn't very interesting. We have to zoom in to get a good view. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a new camera. I'm going to call this Better View. And you can see in the corner here, when you have a camera selected, it will show you what the camera sees. And what I want the camera to see is the moon, nice and close up, but just on one edge. If I run the scene now, nothing happens. If I set this as my active camera, we can get a good impression of what we're going to be seeing through that camera. And this is a very nice view. If we start the moon on a little bit of a rotation as well, that'll give us a nice rotating image to go in with that. So if we click on the moon, so that's my Primsphere High. Should have been renaming those as I went through, but I'm trying to get stuff done. So we call this moon rotate. I think a good speed is going to be about 0.01. Play on start. It's always a good idea to pick the FPS, not time. And there we go. So we have a rotating moon. Nice and simple. And if we want, we can set the moon to be at a little bit of an axis as well, just for the sake of the simulation. If I play this now, setting this as my active camera, there we go. Nice little image. And I want to print some text along the side here. And I also want to have a button that will bring me back to my main system if, for example, I wanted to click on the Earth instead. So we're going to start with the button. Those are very simple. Under Interface, we bring up Button. There's a lot of stuff on here. Most of it you can ignore. We're not going to be using the materials. We are going to set an image. Openspace has very kindly given us some HUD elements, and I like this blue button. If we say back is the words to be written on the button, and we need to state that this button had 4 aspects to it. In fact, you can see them here, 4 different looks, and that's active, hover, down and disable. Animated frames we just leave as 1, otherwise we get a weird flickering effect. I'm going to get rid of this hand cursor, and if I hit play, we get this back button. Currently does nothing. And it's centered in the corner in a way that I'm not a big fan of. So I'm going to quickly stick it about 3% off of the corner. If you want, you can hit play as you're doing this and you get an impression of what it's looking like. And there we go. I think this looks a little bit nicer. I'm now going to make sure that the camera is active at the start of the scene. This is very simple. You have this set active camera, plug it. I clicked the wrong one there. It's not a problem. Under Object, this Set Active Target, Set Active Camera, I'm going to pick Better View as my camera, enable on init, that's all we need. If I hit play, there we go. Got this little button in the back, that's perfectly fine. So there are better ways to design it. I'm not focused too hard on design right now, just giving you an idea of what you might want to do. So the next thing we want to do is make a way for this to bring us back to our main system. The button has a wonderful interface, and we're just going to set up another one of these tunnels. So if I go to, drag this over here, and if I go here and I open up my MISC, another one of these input tunnels, and I'm going to call this back. I'm going to call the tunnel back. Nice and simple. And if it's left clicked, go to the input. You can also set up a hover for the button. Same general idea. This has a mouse over and a mouse out as well. I'm not going to bother with this now because you saw how I did it earlier. And Fortunately you can't drag between windows, but you can copy paste just fine. So when this goes out, I want to add an instance to the system and remove all instances of the moon. Now if you were setting this up yourself, you'd have to make sure that every single instance you were making had this full interaction tree. There are other ways to do it, but for small projects like this is just the easiest way. And I like to arrange it so it looks like this, or you could have it as a more horizontal system. But generally your main idea is every time you load in an instance, you want to destroy every other instance when you're doing projects like this. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. This works now, so if I hover over here, we get to the moon, and regularly save your work. This isn't just for the project, just in real life, regularly save your work. If I click on here, brings us back. The only issue is the camera. So, just check that I got both of these right. So this is add an instance of the system, and I clicked show all instances, which is very bad. What I meant to do was remove all instances. Save this again, run, hover over the moon, I get this, click on back, I get this. So this is how we hop between two scenes. One of them was made in this window, and one of them was made in this window, and we have this main method that connects them both. It's nice and seamless and means you can break your projects down into small pieces. So the last thing I said I was going to do was show you how to put some text on this image. The easiest way to put text is if you hit play to start with. We can then go to our interface, this thing called text zone. Under text zone you will need an image file. Personally, I like these large blank images called something something null, or text zone something null. There's a large one, there's a small one, there's a medium one, and all this is a 256 by 256 transparent image. So I put this in here. We need to add a zone. So this is something I didn't realise when I first used it, but this is where most of your work gets done. You need to add a zone. I'm going to call this Moon Facts. Don't care too much about the font on there, or the font size right now. But very importantly, if you don't hit set constantly, you will lose all the work you do. So, as the text, I'm just going to write hello world. Very common thing for everyone to have as their first text. And when I hit apply, this will appear in our scene. So we have the hello world appear up here. Now obviously we don't want our text up here, we want it in this nice blank empty space here. So what I'll do is, for my x and y, I'll set my x to be about 50 and my y to be about 10. This sends it nicely, and I can increase my font size to, let's say, about 32. Remember, hit set, because otherwise no effects take place, and then you hit apply. Now it's disappeared. Why has it disappeared? Because the box it's in is too small. That's an issue. So what I'll do for this is I'm going to set width to be 1000 and height to be 1000. Practically this just means that it's able to fill up the entire box that it's in, which I told you is 256 by 256. If you want to restrict this, that would make sense if you were using a non-transparent box or a different texture, but this just works for now because it means that the only limits applied are this 256 by 256 boundary. Now if I want to add more words to it, like for instance I have the Wikipedia article for the moon open here, let's take the first paragraph of that article, drop it into here, hit set and apply. 256 by 256 isn't a lot of space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to be proportional and have it take up 40% and 80% respectively of the screen. But all this is doing is it increases the font, it increases the size of the image, which shows you can get some distortion on the text. But if I then drop this down to be 16 again, we get some bleeding on the edge, but this is just how the text is aliased. I find a good way to fix this in a low tech, let's change the font color to white. There we go. I have put too much text in, by the way. That's why we're getting this cut off. Practically you don't want to have more than a few sentences on here. So in fact, let's cut this off to fifth largest letter of the sixth. Let's cut it off there, right? Because I can see that that's actually worked. If I set this and apply, set and apply. Gosh, it's hard to tell what's going on. As ever, there are going to be some issues with my recording, because I'm doing this all on the fly. There we go. I was going to the wrong one. There we go. Set and apply. Now it takes up the screen. Smaller text or more succinct facts are the trick to go along with this one. If we want to make the text a little bit clearer, instead of increasing the size of a 256 image, which involves stretching everything, what we can do is we can go into our favourite image editor, and here I've done GIMP, and I've made a 1028 by 1028 image instead. I haven't tested if it needs to be a factor of 2, but I imagine it probably does. And if we use this instead, so I've saved this in my resources scenes. I pre-recorded demo 1 and in the wrong area there. So resources, I assume I'm going to put this under very unprofessional of me here. Let me export this straight away anyway. So if I go into GIMP, always good to have backups to this anyway. So if I export this as, and it's in textures, of course it's in textures. So let's load these fellas up again. Look in my resources. Very bad at this. Of course. This is, by the way, why I don't make videos usually. I have set this in... Boy howdy, do I have egg on my face right now. There you go. Knew it was in materials. Blank, very large. I just want to show off the effect it would make if you increase the fidelity of the image. So for a start, it shrinks it down to grep. Because we can now fit a lot more text onto there, so I can now up my font size accordingly. This means that the font is taken care of properly. If I set this now to be font size, I don't know, let's say 256, it's probably going to be a little bit too large. This is why, by the way, we have it running in the background, so we can see our updates in real time. All you need to do is set and apply. That means you can get a good bearing on what it actually looks like. Set and apply, set and apply. And this has a lot less bleeding than the other one did because the image size is larger, which means it has more pixels to play with. Very large images will have a performance hit, but not that big. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to center align both of these, because I think that makes the fact look a little bit nicer. I'm going to cancel this out. I'm going to close this off, save everything, hit play. Now you see I haven't used any AR markers for this, but that's because I assume you already know how to use AR markers. This is just showing you how to do proper scene hierarchies and scene interface. So hover over the moon. You can see if we had this with some nice AR, this would be a very nice way to interact with a map of the solar system. Or any system. You can use it as a fact-based delivery system, or as a fact delivery system. And that was all there was for this video. Thank you very much for watching it. Sorry there's a little bit of faffing around in the middle, and I hope you've learned something from this. Cool. Bye now.